Good afternoon, everyone, or morning, depending on where you are. Welcome to the Composting Collaborative's August webinar. This is Charlotte Dreisen, and I'm a project manager with Green Blue, one of the founding partners of the Composting Collaborative. We're going to wait for just another minute to allow additional participants to join, but we'll get started shortly. We currently have everyone's phone line muted to ensure good sound quality, but please, throughout the presentation, feel free to ask lots of questions anytime via the chat box in the bottom left-hand corner, and we'll be sure to answer them during the Q&A portion at the very end. In case you're wondering, we'll also be sending out the recording and slide decks from today's webinars afterwards, probably later on this afternoon, but at the latest tomorrow morning. The Composting Collaborative is an initiative that, as I mentioned, Green Blue founded with the U.S. Composting Council and Biocycle magazine almost 2 years ago now. The collaborative unites compost manufacturers, consumer-facing businesses, and policymakers to share best practices and resources, as well as generate innovative solutions to shared challenges. And our monthly webinar series is one way we aim to highlight best practices and case studies, and frankly, one of my favorite components. This month, we'll be hearing from 3 fantastic speakers who will be discussing developing and enforcing commercial organics recycling programs. They come from a wide range of places scattered across the country, so I'm really excited to be able to better understand the diversity across programs and all of their different perspectives. Cities and counties across the U.S. have become more and more assertive in implementing organics recycling programs for commercial food waste generators in recent years, coming in the form of ordinances, mandates, bans, rules, requirements, and many, many other similar words, but it's clear that there is no one solution that fits all. So today we'll be hearing from Amy Maas at Hennepin County, who's a business recycling specialist with the county's Department of Environment and Energy. She works on recycling and waste reduction initiatives with businesses and residents, and her first foray into zero waste programs was in developing a zero waste program for the University of Minnesota Twin Cities football stadium. We'll also be hearing and starting off with Anna Carvalho, an environmental specialist with the City of San Diego, who leads the implementation of their commercial food waste diversion and food scraps composting program. And Anna was responsible for establishing the county's very first commercial food waste route collection. The program includes numerous large generators ranging from the San Diego International Airport all the way to SeaWorld. And last, but certainly not least, we'll be hearing from Denise Curry, who is a veteran public servant at Prince George's County and is currently serving as the acting section manager for the recycling section, though she's managed the operations of the county's organics composting facility and supervised activities within the Resource Recovery Division's collection unit in prior roles as well. We are in for a really fantastic set of presentations today. If you've just joined us, a reminder that we are indeed recording today's webinar and will be distributing the recording afterwards. We also have everyone's phone line muted, but please do ask Denise, Amy, and Anna lots of questions through the chat box in the bottom left-hand corner, and we'll be sure to address them in the Q&A at the very end of the presentation. And with that, Anna, I'd love to turn it over to you. Anna, are you with us?
Hello, hello. Hi, hello?
Perfect,
hello?
Yep, you are good to go.
Okay, so I'm here. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share our program with everybody. I hope you understand my accent. If you don't understand, please let me know and we'll try to repeat the words, okay? I have a lot of pictures to make it easier to understand. So we're going to talk about our program in San Diego. We're going to do an overview how we do here, how is the city, the state regulations, our program, and what's coming next to us. So we are the 8th big city in the United States with a population close to 1.4 million people in the city. The count is about 3 million. And we divided. We have going north, coastal, and we also have closer to the border. You can see that, I hope you can. Okay, so this is what we are. We are a border town. We have a very strong military presence. The Navy, the Air Force, the Marines are here. We have incredibly, because our soil is really bad, we are desert soil, but we have a nationwide #1 number of organic farms and #1 of small farms too. So it's a lot of need for compost here for good soil. We are a significant tourist industry, large hotels, large amusement parks like the SeaWorld, the zoo, the wild animal park. We have 2 stadiums. We have a large convention center, large university like San Diego State, the California UCSD. We have university, 2 other private universities that are very big. And we have our own composting facility. The city owns and operates the Miramar Greenery. This is what we are right now in terms of waste generation and diversion. We are about 67% waste diversion in the city of San Diego, and the study that we did in 2012, 2013, we saw that 76% of everything that we generate is still going on the landfill, could be recycled, recoverable, or compostable. And from the compostables, 39% are material, organic, and that goes with diapers, yard waste, food waste, soil paper, food soil paper, things like that, clean wood. 15% of that was food waste. From that, it's about 190,000 tons of food waste, and divided by each segment that generate, like commercial, military, single family, and multifamily. So as you can see, commercial and military is 44% of it, and it's easier for us to do any programs with them than multifamily that that's very difficult, or single family. Kids in San Diego, we have a people's ordinance that require us to provide collection of trash, recycling, yard waste from single families for free. So it's very costly for us to start the program with them. So another thing that we need to look in our region, in the county of San Diego, we have plenty of yard waste processing capacity, as you see the green dots there. We have 2 other 2 food waste facilities that were on pilot situation. Now I believe they finalized their permits, but they're small capacity, one up north and one up south. And the only one that's full permit commercial food waste is ours, the Miramar Greenery, which is center located in the city. So has plenty capacity for yard waste, lack of capacity to process food waste. We do that with windrows. We are the only fully permit facility for processing food waste in our region, like I said. And we have already reached our capacity to process food waste. So now we're looking at different system. Going from open windrow to aerated static pile. So let's see about our federal and state laws, how we're doing with that. In California, well, let's go first of all with federal. We have the EPA with the goal to reduce organic material disposed by 50% in 2030. That is together with the USDA and United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So they want to decrease organic waste that's being disposed. Then the next one that we have in California, we have very nice regulations in California, the Assembly Bill 32, the California Global Solution Act, and I have Act there, I apologize for that typo. That's wants to decrease greenhouse gas emissions in California. And as you know, when we bury organic material in the landfill, you create methane, which is the most powerful one of the green gas that we can produce. So by diverting organic waste from the landfill, we'll help in California achieve that goal. Then in 2014, California passed Assembly Bill 1826 that it requires business, commercial facilities, and multifamilies to divert food waste, yard waste, clean wood, and food soil paper. And that took effect in 2016. It was phased. It started with 8 cubic yard generation per week. In 2017, dropped to 4 cubic yard. In 2019, the goal is to go to every one that generates 4 cubic yard of waste, not just organic, of any waste. They will have to divert the organic. And they're going to look into 2021 to change that maybe to 2 cubic yards. So anyone that generates 2 cubic yards of any waste per week will have to divert those materials. And then the new one that we have in California is State Bill 1383, that's short-lived climate pollutant, and the goal is to decrease methane from organic, emissions of methane from organic material. That one is they're still working on the implementation logistics, but the goal is that we're going to have a reduction, a statewide reduction to 50% by 2020 compared to the levels of 2014. And in 2022, is going to become enforceable. They're giving every jurisdiction some time to come up with a plan and create the infrastructure until they become enforcing. So right now we're in the process of educating everybody about that. And in 2025, the goal is to achieve 75%. And an interesting thing of this legislation is the first one that says that you have to donate edible food. Edible food could not go to the landfill. At least 20% of the edible food has to be diverted to feed people, which is a new thing on legislations, and we're trying to figure out how we're going to make this happen. San Diego has a climate action plan that we want to decrease metric tons of CO2, and we have goals, 15% by 2020 and 50% by 2035. So organic diversion is a big part of achieving that goal, and we do have a zero waste plan that wants to achieve 75% waste diversion by 2020 and zero waste by 2040. So we have very ambitious goals, and organic play a big component of achieving that. Now, when we are looking at our program, our City of San Diego program, we have our own composting facility. Where is the slide? Sorry. So the Miramar Greenery, it's an incredible facility. It's on top of a live landfill. The Miramar landfill is in the center of the city, so it's easier. You have less trips from the trucks. But it's very close to residents and business. It's next to an airport runway, which is crazy, but we are next to the Miramar Air Base, military airport. And we have issues with permit and capacity. So we got our pilot composting program in the 90s, received a compost permit in 2000, and were 25 acres until 2008. On 2009, we expanded to 75 acres. Sorry, I just saw another typo there, to 2019 expanded to 75 acres. It's 2009. And then we have open windrow systems and process commercial residential yard waste and commercial food waste. And we do not pre-screen the material. So what we do there, yard waste come or food waste come, we have our spotters looking for contamination. Yard waste is processed through the grinder, placed either only on yard waste windrows and turned into mulch, or food waste. We receive it, we cover immediately, we ground yard waste, place in food and yard waste windrows, process for 10 weeks, and turn into compost. And at the end of it, they are screened on the multi-star screen. So our process is very simple. It doesn't have high-tech component to that. Contamination is a big issue for us. We need to be careful with that. So our program only accepts 1% contamination on the food waste, and no glass and no chemicals. We don't compost papers. We don't accept compostables, no food package, no raw protein. So it's a pretty rigid program. And this is the sign that we have for people what we take and don't take it, explaining we take paper towels and napkins from the kitchen. We take parchment paper. So where am I? Contamination, it depends on what we're talking about. What's contamination for us in other processing facilities might not be contamination, like paper or compostables or cardboard. So it depends. But it depends on how you process and what's your goal with your final product. And in the situation, we process it through windrows, and we don't screen before. So it's a very difficult if you don't have a contamination control on the source. And let me give you an idea why we don't take compostables. We did this study in 2009 of several compostable materials going through our process that we measured the degradation of them. And at the end of it, unfortunately, only 37% completely decomposed. And it was very irregular. Some of the same brand would decompose and not decompose. It created a problem, so we decided that we were not going to take any compostables. Granted, technology has changed, the compostables have changed. We need to do another test, but when we finalize our new system, the aerated static pile, when it's all in place, we're going to take a look at that again. A brief history of our facility. I started in 1990. 2001, we had the first pilot with a military base. 2002, the military base became a regular pilot. We did some special events, some unsuccessful trials. Nothing happened in 2003. 2004, we did special events, and we create our first education outreach material where we went to business and educating them why they should divert food waste, the benefits for them, for the community, and how we could help them. We start adding single generators, and in 2007, we start expanding the permit of the Miramar greenery. We went from 25 acres to 75, and we had a lot more tonnage. And we start adding sites to a waiting list. 2009, we did the compostable program with the GORE. We did the GORE pilot program, and we also did the compostable test. So we look at everything and start adding single generators. In 2010, still adding single generators. In 2011, we created the first route in the city of San Diego, so we could take small generators that wanted to participate and didn't have how. So that was a lot of work with the haulers and with the business in order to implement the process with 1% contamination. So our system is that we meet with administrator, facilities, kitchen managers, maintenance supervisors. We talk to everybody, provide technical assistance, train the kitchen staff, maintenance staff, administration staff, and we do a pilot program with them. So they have to be on probation. At least the 3 first loads that they bring to us, they need to inspect with us at the greenery. And once they pass that, they are on permanent probation. The photo that you said there is how we received it. They put the food waste inside yard waste that's ground around, and then we cover immediately. So our targets is the high diversion rates, the ones that have more food to donate, that we can educate them to divert the food from the landfill or from the greenery and donate, lesser contamination risk, and greater reduction to greenhouse gases. That was what we were looking for when it was voluntary. And we did a big outreach. We went everywhere. We started talking to every section that you can imagine, educating about the problem, the situation, the capabilities, the benefits for them, the benefits for the region, and how we could work together. We also did some work with the Technical Advisory Committee, the TAC, the Subcommittee of Organic. We educate SENDAG members. The city did 6 stakeholders workshops per industry, educating them how things happen and giving examples of sites that were already successfully doing. We worked with the Regional Haulers Association, educating them about the regulations and what happened, what we could do, regional city managers, and we also work with the Southern California Alliance for public-owned treatment work. So the sewer plants, they need to decide if they want extra organic material on them so people could use liquefiers to divert food waste. In San Diego, we don't want that. Our sewer plant doesn't want that. And CalRecycle doesn't recognize that as a diversion unless there is an opportunity for that material to be used as energy and be utilized instead of just thrown away. And we do a lot of work with the Stakeholders Association. We offer tours of the greenery. We take special groups. We take people that the sites are already participating. If they want to bring their employees, we had tours just for hospitals, just for universities. We try to educate people as much as we can. And we also, when we start working with the site, we do an analysis of their loads at the landfill. We schedule a time, they bring the load, and we just do a visual inspection so they can see how much of the food they're throwing away. Because when you talk to chefs in general, they'll say, we don't waste any food. But when you show them what's happening there, they understand that they have a lot and they can compost, and we also show how much they could be donating. We do in our education outreach, we try to build a team and have everybody working together, learning from each other. The workshops that we did, one just for restaurants, one for large venues, one for hotels, one for hospitals. So everybody learning from their own peers, and it was very productive, very positive. We assist with logistics. We tell them how it's the best way to do it based on their culture of their own organization. But what we want is make sure that they don't have any contamination, minimize contamination. So we have the signage, mandatory locking the containers, color coding the containers for recycling and food waste to make it easy for staff. We do trainings but meaningful training. The training is 45 to 60 minutes. It's all for the supervisors and as many kitchen and maintenance staff as possible. It's geared to them. We use pictures of their sites to show them how they do it. And we talk about recycling food waste, the meaning of the diversion. What they're doing has a meaning. It's not just put here on this container and walk away. We try to give them meaning for what they're doing, empower them so they are part of this incredible journey that we have. Some pictures here of sites assisting us inspecting the loads at the greenery, and they all happy. They see it, they look at it, and they are proud of it because they did it. It's a process, and it feels really good not to throw it away. And we have some sites that we call the CSI greenery, looking for the contamination, see what's happening there, and find that, what session from their organization is contaminating the load, so they can go back and educate them that they should not be doing that. Still, contamination happens. What you see there is a load from the same site, absolutely the same site. One load is perfect, the other one not so good. It happens. And then what we do, we work with them. We take photos of the contaminated load, send it to them. They try to fix it. We repeat the probation period. We inspect the loads again, sometimes with them, sometimes just us. If needed, we suspended them from the program until I identify the source of the problem, troubleshoot solution, implement a solution, do some refresh training, and resume the program again on probation, inspecting the loads to make sure that they're okay. We also have other organics diversions that we do here. That it's not just what the large commercial facilities are doing. We try to expand our organic diversion education outreach. We have a backyard compost program for residents. We have vouchers with about 40% discount. They can get also worms. And we have offer master composter classes to teach them on how to use that. And last year, we issued about 1,000 vouchers, so it's been a very successful program for us. We're working hard on expanding it. And then we also have this one, commercial composting on site. We have a hospital doing composting on site, the VA hospital, and they use that also as part of a therapy for the wounded soldiers. We have schools doing. We have multi-dwellings and multi-families doing that too for residents that don't have a yard, but they would like to do it, and the facility has an area big enough that they can have a compost on site. Now, looking ahead, what's coming for us? We have aerate started pile system at the greenery that we're working on that. We got a grant from Car Recycle. We're in the process of installing it. Hopefully by next year it's going to be operating. We can triple our capacity to take food waste right now with a good odor control situation. And we have the private sector building processing capacity in the region, some anaerobic digesters. So that all should be being online by next year or in a year and a half or so. And we have also issues with future regulations. Cal Recycle has new regulations for the end product, the compost. They don't want it to contain more than 0.5% of contamination. And that's very difficult. That shows you that you have to do a really strong and rooted education outreach with the base, with the generators, so they can understand and participate correctly. Because it's cheaper that way than if you try to have it cleaning at the facility when you receive the loads and cleaning. And what kind of product are you going to produce? Where are you going to sell it? Who's going to use that? So the education outreach with the community, the work that we're doing to create a base is very important. We have sites that we train them, and then the chef moves sites, or the busboy or waiter or a manager. And they call us like, hey, I'm working this other site. They don't have food waste here. I want to have food waste. So if the base is done correctly, if you give a foundation, it's going to spread to the other facilities because everybody wants to do it, and it's easy to do it. It has the feel-good component. And we do have a lot of education outreach for food donation. We work with the Feeding San Diego, the food bank, very close to them. And when we see potential for food donation, we work with them. They go to the sites. They work with the sites to create a situation and implement a collection of food donation for the sites. And we have fewer participation for food donation, recognizing food donors, and also for composters, recognizing the composters so they can put on the windows and show to the guests. It's something that we try to recognize them. We have awards that we give it to them. I had a slide, I skipped that slide, I apologize. But we have awards that we give it to them for waste diversion, and we have the seal participation. And this is just the beginning. There's a lot more coming with the mandate and with people understanding the importance of diverting organic material from the landfill, and we have to add now the soil paper and the compostables and all those things that are happening. So it's a very interesting and challenged moment for us, and we are looking forward to see this developing in the right direction and more business participating with us. And that's it. I thank you very much, and I think the next one is Amy, right?
Correct. Amy, I think you should be unmuted if you'd like to get started.
Great, thank you. So thanks, Anne, for that wonderful presentation. I'm going to go over a quick overview of things for people who like to know what's next. So I'm going to cover some context of organics collection in Hennepin County, talk about our current policies and programs, and then talk a little bit about some future tactics and other lessons that we have learned. So not knowing where all the viewers are today, I wanted to describe Hennepin County a little bit. We're located in central Minnesota. We have about 1/5 of the state's population. We're a metro county, with Minneapolis being our biggest city. And with that, we have a high density of businesses. A little more than half of the waste in the county is generated by our commercial businesses. And so that's a pretty big priority for us. So some of the current methods that we have for managing organics in the county, we have 3 main methods. 2 of them are related to feeding animals, since Minnesota is a pretty agricultural state. A lot of our organic material goes towards food to animal feed manufacturing, where they collect organic material, turn it into pellets and feed animals. We also have food to hogs, which is kind of collecting food, cooking it, and then feeding it to pigs. Together, those make up a bigger proportion of what the commercial organics go toward than industrial composting, which is our final but growing option. We've had a shift to more composting lately and less to animals, as the major food to animal feed processor was bought out by another company, and then they stopped accepting wet materials, which left out a lot of grocery stores and other places where they generate a lot of wet food. So we've kind of had to take a step back and rebuild those programs. And with that, between those 3 options, businesses choose whichever one they want to do. We have an open hauling system, which means that any individual business can choose what they want to do with their waste. They pick their hauler, contract with a private hauler, and then the hauler will take it to the end. To give a little context on the sticks and carrots that we have in Minnesota, it's definitely a lot less than what you see in California, but it's growing. We have had a state ban on yard waste disposal since 1994, so that has led to a lot of yard waste composting sites. More recently, we had a state law enacted for the counties in the metro area. For larger businesses, they must recycle standard recyclables, so cans and bottles. And then we've had 2 cities in Hennepin County with zero waste packaging ordinances in the past couple of years, which regulate to-go packaging at restaurants. And that affects businesses, since if whatever they're giving out must be reusable, recyclable, or compostable, they can use compostable plastics. And if any business is using a compostable plastics in both of those cities, they must have organics recycling service in place. Our 2018 county master plan included some state goals that we have, which is to hit 75% diversion by 2030. And with that, we want to hit 15% of that collected as organic material. County also offers some financial incentives to incentivize businesses to collect organics and recycling. At our transfer station, we had lower tipping fees for recycling and organics. And also, recycling and organics are exempted from the taxes that you would have to pay on dispatch. So you may have noticed that we don't actually have a lot of regulations on collecting commercial organics. So one major way that we have tried to influence the commercial business owners is by offering incentives in the form of grants. So we have school grants, business grants. We have some grants for municipalities, but with businesses, we work with big business, small business, for-profits, nonprofits, pretty much everyone across the board. They're working on waste reduction, organics, recycling, and recycling projects. We have a budget of $750,000 a year going towards this, so it's pretty significant in terms of some of the grants programs that we have. And we have chosen some eligible items for this grant program based on some of the barriers that we have heard from businesses. So addressing the need to get a separate container to have recycling, or taking care of space needs. So we allow containers to collect and transport organics, compactors, balers. We include things like compostable liners or food service items if they're staying on site. And then we also have things like construction upgrades. So if you need to expand an enclosure around your dumpster area and you can't fit a dumpster for your organics recycling, it would be an eligible expense to make it bigger. So our grant program hasn't been around too long, but it has been constantly evolving. We have changed the way that we grant our funds, so businesses can buy materials. Excuse me one moment, I have a cold. I'm going to mute myself while I clear my throat. All right. So businesses can kind of choose what they want based on different containers. We offer a standardized container, which is what the picture you'll see there, which we would buy and have arrive at their business for them, which we found is really helpful because a lot of people don't have the expertise in knowing what works best in a space, or they don't want to go through the trouble of ordering all of that and having it delivered. So as having a grant program where that just arrives to them, it's been really successful. And it's good to see that some of our most successful grants are those that have started organics. They have an average of 41% increase in their diversion. And then among those organics programs, those organics projects, we've had some experience and started to fund fewer projects where they want to do front of house organics, because we've seen that those can be really difficult to manage and difficult to educate and keep up with. And I'll speak a little bit more to that as we go on. So I just switched a slide and I'm going to go back to show you signage. So we've offered a lot of free signage, and this is part of our incentive program, part of educating folks. So the signage you see in this picture, we focus on color coding things, showing images instead of wording, because you can't always hit all of the first languages of people. We also offer in-person trainings, which we find are the most effective. We can tailor them to whatever a company wants, usually half an hour to an hour. They can be longer than that, get really into the details, but those are staff intensive, and we have 3 full-time staff working on it. We have about 10 people in my area that work on recycling in the county. So we're working on developing some online training resources so that we can increase our reach and the accessibility of that for folks. So this is a little bit of a lighthearted example of some difficulties we've had in managing organics in the county. A lot of the education, it's hard to keep up on the complex packaging changes. And so I noticed Anne had a slide that touched on that a little bit, but there's a lot of different packaging out there, and people's familiarity with different types of packaging really varies. This image is of a business we worked with who put in the time and the money to buy all compostable products for their front of house, and then it's a type of a business where you eat and throw away your own things. And they still had a trash section on their little waste station, but people were throwing away a lot of things that they had bought that are compostable. So this right here is just an example showing you that contamination has been a big issue, especially in the front of house when you're dealing with the public. Definitely something to keep in mind there. So even with all of our incentive programs and all of our work with businesses, we've noticed that organics collection isn't really increasing very much anymore, and we're only going to get minimal progress by offering incentives. We rely on businesses to come to us, so they have to already be motivated enough to want to do this. They have to know our resources are available and come and work on it with us. The graph on the left is actually declining, and that has to do with a crackdown that we've done on contamination and some changes to what our main composters accept. We've hired an inspector to sit and watch incoming organics loads at our transfer station. So trucks will pick up organics around the county, drop it off at our transfer station, we'll consolidate it and bring it to one of two major composters. We've started to reject loads that have too much contamination, and so kind of a drop-off in 2017 is most likely due to that. So like I mentioned, we've seen some limited progress. We've put together a new policy. We're working on updating our county recycling ordinance, which was last updated in 1986, and it doesn't really reflect what we're currently doing in the county. We've made a lot of strides since then. We have some practices that are much better, and we're looking on going even farther forward with that. So our organics focus in the recycling ordinance, we're looking at making sure that curbside collection is offered at all single-family residences by 2022. With multifamily, we actually don't have an organics requirement, and that's because we're still working on recycling with multifamily. We've experienced a lot of contamination. We've seen they have much lower levels of recycling than businesses or residents. So we'll come back and look at that, but we really want to get recycling in a good place before we move on and confuse it with organics. And then the most exciting part is we're looking at making a mandate for larger commercial generators. So certain sectors of businesses in high food generating areas, such as food manufacturing, restaurants, or caterers with 8 or more cubic yards of trash or 1 ton of trash per week are going to be required to collect food waste back of house. And so we made a conscious choice to say they need to do it back of house, picked businesses of this size. We found through our grant program that around that size, businesses can start to break even, so it won't be too much of an extra cost to get these folks on board. And then kind of get the bulk of the food material is the biggest bang for the buck. And then dealing with this extra material, we're kind of at capacity in our current composting and animal feed. So we're looking at expanding our transfer station capacity so we can collect and consolidate more material, looking at getting a location in the southern metro. Right now, both of our compost facilities are actually outside of the county to the south. And so if you're in the south and you want to drop it up at our transfer station, you bring it up to the north end of the county. And then Another way to manage our organics, we have released a request for qualifications for an anaerobic digestion facility, but that's currently out, so I can't say much more about that. So outside of just policy, we have some ongoing newer practices working with stadiums and larger generators on their food waste and organics. We have 4 pretty major stadiums in the county, and we've worked with them to get 3 of them to have zero waste programs, which is working on custom signage for them. Those 3 have changed to moving all of their packaging so that it's compostable. The majority of their packaging, as far as is feasible. Working with them for technical assistance, and then kind of just general badgering to get them on the zero waste bandwagon. And that's because these large facilities are so visible and they're really big education pieces for the public. Also really challenging because you have people coming from outside of the county, farther outside in the state, where they may not have any familiarity with a compostable cup. So it's a little challenging to work with them, but we're doing pretty well. We've also worked with some corporate headquarters in Minneapolis and the surrounding suburbs. There are a lot of headquarters like Target, Dairy Queen, or Best Buy, where we've spent a little bit of extra time working with them and helping them develop their programs. There's also a statewide initiative in sustainability in brewing. And we are starting a project working with the Minnesota Craft Brewers Guild to address their spent grains, because that's a large source of pretty pure organic materials. But with craft brewing, you may not be producing as much, and it's all spread out. So we're looking at kind of coming up with a collective solution on that. And then going a little bit farther into preventing waste, going up higher on the hierarchy. We want to prevent food from becoming waste in the first place. So these pictures here are from some really new pilot projects we've been working on. On the top left, you'll see a project that actually just started last week. We're working with 3 sites on tracking their waste and working on source reduction. So at these sites, they're going to be measuring all of the things that they're throwing out, reasons why they've thrown it out, working with the coach to set goals and change their procedures to prevent that waste in the first place. The middle image shows a log being filled out, and that's working on donations of excess prepared foods. So we have a pretty robust donation system set up in Hennepin County, but we noticed that there was a little bit of a gap in smaller programs where they're producing irregular amounts. Every once in a while they'll produce extra food, and transportation is a limiting factor. So even if you had a location where they wanted to donate food to a meal program and the meal program wanted it, you wouldn't always have a way to get there. So we're looking at training some volunteers to go collect the food and bring it over to the meal program so they can serve it. And then the last picture on the right is of a project that we did with a food bank who was collecting excess produce from farmers markets. And in Minnesota, we have a really seasonal growing season. So pretty much grow all of our food in the summer. In the winter, everything's frozen. There's no fresh produce locally anyway. So we worked with a food company. We collected food from the farmers markets. You can only feed people so many zucchini. So whatever they thought they couldn't give away that week, they processed it, froze it, and then they stored it to give away to food programs in the winter. So these are just a few examples of things that we're working on beyond waste and making sure that it doesn't have to be managed as waste in the first place. So I have already mentioned some of the lessons that we've learned within individual programs, but I just wanted to touch back on a couple of things. First of all I think we found that grants are really helpful to make dealing with waste a priority. Since we didn't have a mandate, we were getting a lot of people who were interested in it. It's really helpful for smaller businesses, nonprofits, so that they can align their processes with their values. Because waste is most likely not a huge priority. So by making these funds available to start up programs, it's been a really nice way to do that. We found that a lot of our grants have gotten smaller over the years. They're really small projects. Around our average grant is $4,000, even though we offer our grants in chunks up to $50,000. So they're really helpful for that. But we found that you can only get so far with those people who are interested. You can only reach out to so many. So with the mandate, we're going to hopefully get a lot more people on board. And we plan to keep our grants in process, make sure that we're offering funding to help these people meet our goals. Because with the mandate that we have, our ordinance change, we do have a draft out for public review. A lot of things we've heard, businesses are worried about the same issues that we do focus on with the grant program. And we are in a bit of a unique position right now since we're looking at mandating this, but we haven't in the past. A lot of the feedback we've heard is that businesses are expecting this. They've heard it around the nation. A lot of food service companies have to do it in other locations. So it's just something that they just need to figure out the logistics for. And we've heard a lot of them. Some people are really for it. Some people are really against it. But the general consensus, the general feeling that we've gotten is that they just want to know how. And I've shown some pictures here on this slide about contamination. Definitely, I always worry about contamination. I saw with Anne's on this presentation, there's they don't want any of the packaging. And you'll see that people still need to work on training. So definitely communication is key, technical assistance is key. The image on the right, which I can tell you, this image here shows an actual picture that our monitor took at the transfer station. Still get some weird things in there sometimes. And then our composters do have to deal with contamination. But I would recommend for others to just, moving forward, there's always more to do. There's always more organics you can collect. And as we've built our program up over the years, we've started to look, like I just mentioned, into reduction. We hadn't covered that as much in the past. Work on where there's energy for it. So with that, I'm going to wrap up my presentation. I do have, at the end of my slides, I have links to some of our resources. So this is shared. I have links to all of those directly. And with that, thank you for listening to my presentation, and I'll pass it off to Denise.
Well, thank you very much. I am delighted to be here and appreciate the opportunity to share with you the evolution of Prince George's County's composting program. For those of you who don't know, Prince George's County is located just outside of Washington, D.C. and bordered by several other counties, including Montgomery, Anne Arundel, and Calvert and Charles counties. We're one of the largest in the state of Maryland, with approximately 900,000 residents. And to give you an overview of our facility, we've owned and operated our own composting facility for the past 26 years. It's a large 200-plus acre facility in Upper Marlboro, which is our county seat. And the facility is operated by contract with Maryland Environmental Service. We take yard trimmings, grass clippings, branches, and small brush and turn that into a product that is trademarked as Leaf Grow. Our Christmas trees are mulched and provided to residents at an annual, I think we've done it for each of the past 18 years, provided at an annual mulch giveaway in the spring in recognition of Earth Day. And our Food scraps and yard trim combined is trademarked and sold under the brand name of Leaf Grow Gold. Well, here again, in the 1990s, Maryland established their 20% recycling diversion rate, and of course, Prince George's wanted to exceed that. We set our goal a tad bit higher at 35%. We recognized at that time that 15% of what was landfilled in our county landfill was organic yard waste. So at that time, we opened our own composting facility. In addition to opening the facility, we established a residential curbside collection program, and we have both private and county contractors delivering materials to our facility. We service approximately 165,000 households curbside yard waste collection, process roughly 60,000 tons annually in yard trim. The process for our yard trim is an open windrow process. We take the yard waste in. It's put through a horizontal grinder and then placed into windrows. The windrows, I'll give you a little detail on those. They're approximately 15 feet wide, 8 to 10 feet tall, and about 300 yards, let's say 900 feet long, in our longest area on the site. The compost is later spread on a pad and screened so that we spread it so it can dry, and then we screen it. The final product, again, is leaf grow. It takes roughly 6 to 9 months, depending on the weather conditions here, to process materials in open windrow. During the 2012 legislative session, in light of increasing the waste diversion goals, we had a goal set of 45% by 2015. The Prince George's County Council passed the most environmentally aggressive bill in the last 20 years. CB 87 mandated that we begin a food scrap composting pilot project by 2014. As aggressive as we are, we started our food scrap pilot in 2013, a full year ahead of schedule. We tested the food scrap composting utilizing the Gore cover technology. Since that time, our system has undergone 2 expansions. From a 3-heap operation, which was not a continuous operation, we progressed to a 4-heap that allowed us to continuously process material, and then from 4 heaps to 8, with incremental food scrap increases respectively. 1,509 tons, 44 tons, 400 tons, 9,785 tons in FY18. The pictures are demonstrations of our operation. Our 3-heap is at the top, and in the lower corner you can see the 8-heap. You can just see the 8-heap operation. The systems are mobile, meaning we can move them around our facility to accommodate growth and expansion as we need to. So the customers at the time of our 2013 pilot include the University of Maryland, University Park, Apple Valley is a hauler, Progressive Waste Solutions was a hauler, Compost Crew was also a hauler, and the city of Tacoma Park. And represented below in the right-hand corner, an example, some of the food food waste comes in bagged and unbagged to our facility. Unbagged food, of course, is chipped and covered immediately, as well as bagged materials. We try to cover it immediately. And only compostable materials are accepted as facility. So this chart is a representation of the tonnage of food that was delivered to the facility during the pilot phase. You see both the purple areas are in-county sources of material from the University of Maryland and University Park, which is a community very close to the University of Maryland. The progressive waste material is material that was combined. It had a little bit of material from Prince George's County as well as material from D.C. say roughly 65% of the material collected in that blue bar is from D.C. and 35% was Prince George's composting material, food scraps, and it was hauled by the Progressive Waste Company. The yellow bar here represents materials hauled by Apple Valley from Anne Arundel County. And the red bar, of course, shows what we rejected, meaning that the load was entirely too contaminated. We weren't going to, we didn't accept it. We weren't going to process it or use it at all in our system. So through the 2013 pilot, we learned a substantial amount of information and knowledge. We gained a lot. We recognized that quality compost starts with quality ingredients. Kind of odd to say that considering we're talking food scraps, but you have to have clean, compostable organic matter in order to get quality compost. Of course, the less contaminants per load we encouraged, and we have a zero tolerance for contamination. I don't like to say plastics, but because it's a term that most people accept and recognize, yes, we accept only compostable bagging products. Our acceptable list is published on our website and available via email. We get phone calls. We distribute our list. The plastics or compostable products are those that we have tested through our system and know our system can process and manage within the time frame that it takes to process material through an 8-heap system. And then during the 2013 pilot, this is a representation of how we removed the contaminants at that time. They were removed by hand, and our staff from the composting facility, great bunch of folks to work with, were out there in their hazmat suits picking through, removing the large, obvious contaminants. Anything small that they may have missed was processed through the horizontal grinder and removed during the screening process. We did find that some of the materials, some of the compostables that we do accept and process didn't necessarily break down within the 8 to 10 week time frame that we process material in through the GORE system. So those materials would be processed through the system a second time, would eventually break down. So in addition to the legislation, the mandate for implementing the food scrap pilot, we did away with plastics for the collection of yard trim. Plastic bags were banned from our facility. See, the picture on the left shows you yard trim coming in the plastic bags, and it was a processing nightmare. Our facility, the entire lot, would have shards of plastic flying in the air, collected along the fence, and we had a number of staff whose job was to clean the fence line and capture as much of that plastic as possible. Since we've transitioned to the paper bags for yard waste, it's been phenomenal. The facility is clean, and of course the paper bags are a tremendous source of carbon for the food scrap operation. So now we are growing yet again. We have a full-scale 12-bunker mega heap system utilizing GORE covers. We're near completion. If you take a look at the large picture on the lower right, let me grab my pointer. Down here in the lower corner is where the construction is taking place for the 12 mega heap system. It's expected to be complete by mid-September. And this system will allow the county to process approximately 32,000 additional tons of food scraps each year. And this installation makes us the largest installation of its kind on the East Coast. So look at our annual food scrap tonnage, and we're growing obviously exponentially. these 2015, we accepted and processed 2,807 tons of food scraps. Going up to 2017, we did 7,730 tons. Last year, in 2018, we processed 9,785 tons of food scraps. With the GORE system, again, our projected processing would be over 32,000 tons. Our current food scrap customers still include the Department of the Environment. We have in our county offices, some of our county offices are collecting food scraps for processing. They're collected by our contractor and delivered to the compost facility in Upper Marlboro. University of Maryland is our star of this entire process. They're an example of closed-loop recycling, which means the university owns a farm located just off of 202 in Upper Marlboro, where they produce and grow vegetables that are served in the cafeterias on the campus of the University of Maryland. The food scraps are captured from the cafeterias and delivered back to the composting facility, where they're put through the food scrap composting operation, and the end product, leaf grow, is also used to condition the soil at the university's farm. So there's our example of closed loop and just the way nature intended it for us. We have a number of private contractors and haulers who bring material to us. Several other counties are also bringing materials to our Western Branch location. The Smithsonian, the Washington Nationals, and we have processed and managed events for the Department of the Environment, for Maryland's Department of the Environment. As we continue to grow and develop our program and move forward, we did a waste characterization study at our landfill, and it revealed that 53% of what is thrown away is organic. So to address some of that, we, in 2017, implemented a year-long EPA residential food scrap collection pilot. We have approximately 200 households from several different communities throughout the county participating. It was an opt-in program, and residents were provided with the necessary materials to implement the pilot. We're hoping that they can provide us with information and feedback to determine best practices so that we can roll this pilot program out on a larger scale to incrementally to the rest of the residents in our curbside program. The accepted materials are food and food soil paper items, including paper towels, paper plates and napkins, pizza boxes, etc. The materials are collected on Yard Waste Collection Day, which is Monday countywide, and they are being combined with yard trim from one of our collection areas. When we started our pilot, we collected our materials separately initially just to get a gauge on the tonnage of food scraps that we would get per household. Now that we've gotten a gauge on what we would receive from the average household, we're combining with yard trim to figure out our recipes and our processing ideas in order to produce our leaf grow gold. With all of these practices and things that we've been working on and moving forward, these things have helped us to maintain our number one spot. We've been number one in waste diversion in the entire state of Maryland for 3 consecutive years. Falling just short this year on our recycling rate, but no small feat. We're number one for 3 consecutive years, and I'm confident that the food scrap program, our composting operation, has been key in propelling us to the forefront. With this expansion, I don't think there'll be much competition in the state of Maryland. Our next steps would be to expand the residential food scrap collection pilot and make it permanent, expand commercial opportunities, increase the composting program throughout the rest of the county buildings, and promote and pilot school system composting programs. In addition, the biggest factor, a great motivator and incentive, is to maintain a lower tip rate than that of the landfill. I think that's a huge incentive. We currently have a lower tip rate, and we plan to keep it that way so that we can encourage the diversion without having to mandate diversion rates. And with that, I thank you for your time and attention.
Thanks, Denise, so much for that presentation, and thank you, Amy and Anna, for starting us off. We have a ton of audience questions, so I'm just going to jump right in. But to our audience, please feel free to keep sending them down below through the chat box on the bottom left-hand side. First, if you all would mind speaking to the annual budget of your programs, how much do they cost to run, and how is the funding allocated from the city or county perspective?
Anyone I'll chime in for Prince George's. The operation of our composting facility is roughly $3.5 million this year. That's for operations of the composting system, both food scrap and open windrow processes.
Thanks, Denise. Anna and Amy, would you mind speaking to San Diego and Hennepin County?
Okay, this is Anna. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Unfortunately, I don't have those numbers with me. We cover the cost with tipping fee, and we sell the product. The residents can pick up mulch and compost for free, but we also sell for landscapers and some other companies that bag them and sell them, and we have the tipping fee. We kind of break even, but I don't have the numbers for you. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Amy, how about you? What's it like in Hennepin County in terms of how the funding for the program is allocated and how big that is?
Yeah, so kind of, I don't have all the exact costs on our transportation, because that's the main thing that we run. We don't have ownership of any composting facility, but with our grants program, that funding comes from solid waste fees.
Wonderful. A couple questions came in about that in particular, so I'm glad you mentioned. And before we move off that point, can I ask if the training materials that you guys offer in your education and outreach program are available to the public? I think we may have some audience members that would love to take a look.
This is Anna. In our website, we have the requirements for the program. We have the links for donation. We have the links for information with EPA. And what we do, the trainings that we do, we customize the training per each site. So we wouldn't have that information on the website, but just the requirements for single generators and route participants.
For Hennepin County, we kind of do the same thing, but we have a lot of our materials online. Like we have a lot of guides, we have a best practice guide. With the information that I was talking about doing online trainings, that's in the works, so that's not up yet, but it will be posted.
Really exciting. And in that program, Amy, can you speak a bit about how most food waste generators have they found it easy to get all their staff in one place at the same time for some of that in-person training? Or is that something that has been a real struggle, especially with a lot of turnover in this sector?
Yeah, I think that's kind of gone both ways. Some places with more time on their hands, so if you're talking about collecting organics in an office building, it's a lot easier to get an all-employee training, but where you have different shifts, it can be difficult. We're willing to go back and train different shifts, but definitely turnover is an issue in the food service industry. So it's really about kind of doing constant training for those folks. And more of a train the trainer setup.
And Anna, how about you in San Diego? Does that reflect your experiences as well?
Yes, we do the training for all the supervisors and as many staff as possible. We give them the training after we customize the training to them. We give it to them so they can use on the employee orientation and refresh trainers. When they have some severe issues with contamination, we come back and do refresh trainers, or when, all the management change or something, we do that. And we have a group email, send it to them, like a success story from one of the participants, or we read something interesting about how this is doing or that is doing, source reduction, donation, how much they're contributing for the donation, how much they're contributing with decreasing greenhouse gases, how many days of landfill they save by diverting the food waste. We're constantly giving them that information, stats that they can use and motivating their employees.
Wonderful. So next question for you all is about, whether, if, and how well peer pressure works on commercial generators. Denise, if maybe you'd be able to start. It was really intriguing to hear about how well UMD has been in a partner for your commercial organics program or institutional organics program. Has that, kind of perked up the ears of other universities in the DC metro area, or, other generators that come to mind where that effect's been taking place?
Absolutely. There's clamor of activity, anxious customers trying to get in the door. Until the current expansion is complete, we're maxed out. So there's huge demand for access from regionally, not just from Prince George's or Maryland counties, but even DC and further out. Virginia is even interested. There's no shortage of customers.
And Amy and Anna, how would you guys characterize whether peer pressure has been effective over in your neck of the woods?
I would say I think it's semi-effective. We've definitely used it in our stadiums, kind of put them against one another, just kind of fun competition. But then, so with our training and talking about food waste reduction, they've actually already started to ask, can we compare ourselves to industry averages? Can we talk to other folks and see how they're doing? But there's a little bit of worry about direct competition, so they don't want to share. So then it gets harder for people to learn from one another.
This is Anna. We encourage that a lot. I call myself a gossiper. I go from one place to another telling what the one is doing, what the other is doing, how they find solutions, and they kind of try to keep up with each other. Recently, we took 7 of the main hotels in San Diego to tour one of them that has a fantastic work on food donation, so they could see, because a lot of them have a food donation that's not a comprehensive program. So they saw the other hotel doing a fantastic work and saving a ton of money and the PR for being social responsible, and they start the program. We do the workshops and we invite them to talk to their peers. So restaurants talk to other restaurants, hospitals talking to hospitals, large venues to large venues. We, in the past, participate in the large venues meetings in San Diego. We'll give them some information, and they will exchange ideas. They visit each other to see how they are doing and learn from each other. We were able to build a group that they don't compete with each other. They try to all get better together. They exchange ideas. They fight excited and learn from each other, and they are okay sharing the ideas with others. So that's pretty good. When we have conference in San Diego, organic conference like BioCycle, we take them on tours of the sites. So the sites like to show what they are doing, and other sites come to see that too. They speak in conference. We make sure that they have an opportunity to show their work and not us talking on their behalf. By doing that, we build the confidence and decrease the competition in terms of I have to be better than them, but create a team that they all want to do better, and they're all going to participate in this big effort that we have on diverting the food to feed people, feed animals, and to compost. It's a really healthy environment, I believe.
Yeah, that is fascinating to learn more about. I love the aspect of peer pressure, and Denise, I love the aspect of like a waiting list that's been developed, and people that are chomping at the bit to get access to the increased processing capacity. That is awesome. Next question for you all is about the end product. So Denise, I know you told us a little bit about leaf grow, and we have a few questions that if you can tell us how much it goes for, bagged versus bulk, what kind of testing happens on the end product for leaf grow and leaf grow gold. And then Anna and Amy, if you'd maybe be able to follow and share a bit about, I know Amy, you aren't processing the material yourselves, but if you guys would be able to speak to roughly what it costs and what kind of markets.
All right. I can't give you the specific numbers for the cost of leaf grow or leaf grow gold. It is sold in bulk from our facility, and the pricing varies depending on quantities and frequency. I can tell you that we sell out of both products every year, and it is a minimum of 5 cubic yard purchase when you purchase it from our facility. The testing is done on the state level. I think Department of Ag tests both products, and we've discovered that the leaf grow gold has a higher nitrogen content. Both products are maintained at PFRP for 3 to 4 days to kill off any pathogens, and to ensure that it's safe for use in growing situations.
Thanks, Denise. Amy, maybe if you would want to start, and then Anna?
Sure. Yeah. So since we don't actually run the facility, I don't have a great idea of what it costs. But I know that both of the two facilities that we use, they make compost use that primarily with commercial landscapers.
Yeah.
So a lot of it goes towards transportation projects, revegetating roadways. It's also available to the public too.
This is Anna. So what we do is, like I said, we offer the mulch and compost for free. We sell the wood chips, color, brown, black, and red, and we sell mulch and compost. And we try to do it for like Caltran that does all the landscape around the freeways around here, the Park and Recreation Department for the City of San Diego. We are in the process of, because of the demand in now, with all the legislation that a lot of food waste has to be processed. We're going to have a lot more compost, and we are trying to see if we can work with the military facilities, and also any contract that we have for the landscape with within the city, any contract with the city, that they will utilize our products. That's one thing that we're looking at. We had, with the Tech Organic, we had some people coming, soil experts, talking to us, because at first we all think that all the farms want compost is good for them, but then there is a cost for the implementation for the mixing the soil with compost, and the transport to the farms. They're not very close to the city, and the avocado farmers, normally they're in the hills, it's very hard for them to apply the compost. They like to leave the leaves fall, and that will create a natural situation, and they create the healthy soil. So we're looking at all those things. But we have prices for our products on the website too, if you want to look at it. I don't know all of them by heart, but I know that we have something that $12 for half-inch compost, and mulch is about $5 for 4-inch mulch. So the prices are not high because we are a government, and we just try to keep the facility breaking even. Wood chips are more expensive. The color or the regular one's about $24. So it varies. It's all in our website available if you want to see it.
Thanks, Anna. So I know we are just about actually a couple minutes over time, and knowing you guys have a few more minutes to chat with us before we part, I'd love to leave it on a question of what would you have liked to know maybe 5-10 years ago in the commercial organics program that you guys facilitate. in your cities and counties. What would be the parting wisdom you would share with programs that are maybe earlier in their journey, don't have maybe as robust support from a higher level? And maybe Anna, if we can start with you and then kind of work backwards to Amy and Denise.
Sure. If I understand you correct, I think the main thing, and that we're big on that, is education outreach. You got to educate people about what they are doing. It's not a training like put the container here, put it inside, and we'll take it, and that's it. If people don't understand how important every action is, how important their actions, how they count for the better of the community, for the better environment for them, it loses meaning for them. So when we work with them, the trainees, the photos are specific of what they're doing there. We talk to each employee. We include their photos. We explain what is the importance for that, for, like I said, greenhouse gases, creating soil that will grow food, that's the business that they are, for healthy soil, for water conservation, for helping with the fire erosions, and we have the problems here in California. So we connect the dots for them, and we bring meaning for what they are doing. It's not just a robot training. It's an education process that those people will carry with them, and we see the results as they move from jobs to jobs. They contact us, and as the programs are being sustainable, we have programs that are doing with us for 15 years now and still doing great, 1% contamination, and working on reducing the food waste. We work with them first with compost, and then they look at it and they see how much they could divert to donate for people or animals, and then how much they can do source reduction. We recently have a hotel that was bringing to us about 4 or 5 tons a week, and now they're bringing 2 tons a week because they're working so hard in source reduction and with the food donation. And that we bring it to everybody and share with the industry, local industry, and becomes an important program for the whole. They set an example for the whole industry, and everybody's trying to do the same and achieve the same results. So education for me is the basic. You don't start a program without knowing how you're going to reach out to your community and bring them together to be partners of you on that, and not just enforcement of what the legislation say.
I think that's some great advice there. Thank you, Anna. I would echo everything you said. I think people generally do start becoming more aware of things once they're forced to separate it out from the trash. You start to see what's going in there. So starting a separation system in general is just a really good way to raise awareness and kind of do some education. I would say it's not completely under your control, but being as aware as possible of what your end products are going to be, whether it's composting or anaerobic digestion or what you're donating, and then working really hard backwards from that and making sure you maintain quality across the system and that you're not changing a lot of what goes into that system. I mentioned that just kind of as an example. Our composters have changed the materials that they accept over the years, and so that's been really difficult to go back to people we've talked with and say, okay, well, you can't put this in the compost anymore. They don't want it. So doing that re-education, if they would have just had set rules and then kept them, I think we'd be a lot farther along. But you can't always change that.
This is Anna. Can I add something?
Sure.
So it's important also to show them that the customers are looking for business that are more environmentally responsible. Recently, the Restaurant Association released a survey that they did and showing how the customers are looking for restaurants that are sustainable and that they know how to do what they do with the food waste, divert properly and feed people. Some hotels have done a study too showing that the guests wanted to know if they would like to order the breakfast in advance for the next day instead of have a buffet style, so they know there will be less food. The same thing that they're paying now. If you don't put your towel to wash, you get a $5 discount on the cafeteria of the hotel. So guests are looking for that, and they're trying to do that. And we bring that information to the business too. And another thing that we do here, thanks to BioCycle, which is a great venue for us to share that kind of technical information and successful stories, we work on educating, okay, how much a hotel that donates saves opposed to the hotel that doesn't donate. We share good stories on, like, our airport. It's fantastic. 45 sites in the airport participate in the food waste program with 1% contamination. So that makes them really proud, and they don't want to drop the ball, and they want to be the example for other airports. Other airports come here and take a look at things and learn from them. So that also helps expand their success to other states, even not just in California, because they see how the work is done. So we have the recognition of them as composters, as zero participation. We have a recognition as donations. We give awards. We write articles. We exchange emails. They come and talk in presentations. We organize tours for the sites. That builds the positive reinforcement that they need to continue their job that sometimes might not be the cheapest one or the easiest one to do. I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. Denise, how about you? What kind of parting words and recommendations would you give to other programs that are trying to replicate something that you've achieved?
I think the best advice I can offer is to, if at all possible, go out and see the operation. Get an opportunity to tour the facility, meet face-to-face with those people who are on the ground making it happen. And, just share. We should, as we have today, continue to share and exchange information openly and freely that we might all pull from to enhance our own programs and operations.
Well put. That's an eloquent way of leaving it off, I think. Well, thank you, Anna, Amy, and Denise, so much for your thoughts today and for your presentations. I think this is a great place for us to leave off. I know we could easily go on for many hours more in discussion. This has been really wonderful. If you've enjoyed today's presentation, we encourage you to become a member of the Composting Collaborative if you aren't already. Any company, organization, or government entity is eligible to be a member, and membership is free. You'll be able to stay in the loop about the Composting Collaborative's work, in-person events, and future webinars, and it's a quick online application at our site, compostingcollaborative.org. And before we go, I'd like to tell you all a little bit about our September Composting Collaborative webinar that will be coming up in a few weeks. It's scheduled for Thursday, September 20th, same time as now, 2 to 3 p.m., 2 to 3:15 p.m. Eastern. Nora Goldstein, editor of BioCycle, the group that Anna just mentioned, are indeed an invaluable resource for the organics community and are a founding member of the Composting Collaborative. And Nora will be moderating that webinar, joined by Ed Wansing of the Composting Company, a composter that manufactures products for stormwater applications, and they'll be discussing stormwater and erosion control applications for composting. They'll be joined by Walter Willis with the Solid Waste Agency of Lake County, Illinois, who will speak to their program and exciting new state legislation that has to do with end markets for compost products. And we're also lucky to be joined by David McDonald with the Seattle Public Utilities, who also will lend his expertise to the discussion. But for today, thank you all for tuning in to this really phenomenal set of presentations and discussions on commercial organics recycling programs. And again, thank you, Amy, Anna, and Denise, for all of your thoughts.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate the opportunity.
You all.
Have
a good evening.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day, and a reminder that we will indeed be sending out the recording for this presentation for the webinar as a whole later on today. Have a great rest of your Wednesday.